Today we're going to talk about the W-4. This is going to be a two-part video. In the first part of the video, it's going to be how to fill out the W-4 to make sure that your federal income tax withholdings are correct. And in the second part of this video, it's going to be 7 mistakes to avoid when filling out the W-4. My name is Travis Sickle, Certified Financial Planner with Sickle Hunter Financial Advisors. The W-4 is the IRS tax worksheet that helps you determine the federal income tax withholdings that your employer should apply to each one of your paychecks. It's essentially an estimate of how much taxes you'll owe on your income. While the IRS hasn't provided the 2018 W-4, they have provided guidance that the 2017 form and any changes that they're going to make or guidance that they're going to provide will be able to be used with last year's 2017 W-4. If you need a copy of the W-4 or just want to print it out and follow along, I've attached the link below. This is Form W-4 and it's for 2017. However, you can still use it according to the IRS. And if we're looking at the guidance from the IRS, and I highlighted it right here, is the IRS emphasized that this information was designed to work with the existing forms W-4 that employees have already filed. So if you've already filled out your W-4 for 2017, or you're just starting out and you're filling it out now, then you don't have to necessarily worry about what form it is. 2018 is not out yet. The W-4 is a worksheet that's essentially going to help you figure out how much federal income tax withholding should be applied to your paycheck. And it's going to do that through figuring out the amount of allowances that you qualify for or through additional withholdings that should be applied to your federal income tax on each paycheck. Now, you don't want any surprises at the end of the year, so you don't want to have a huge tax liability at the end of the year. And you also really want to avoid having a huge refund as well. A large refund is essentially a tax-free loan to the IRS where you could have gotten back that money throughout the course of the year in each paycheck. The W-4 allowances, the more allowances that you have, the less federal income taxes that you're going to pay on each paycheck. But that doesn't affect the amount of tax liability that you're going to have overall. It only affects how much you're withholding from each paycheck. The goal of the W-4 is to anticipate the amount of tax liability that you're going to have so you can pay it on each paycheck. So we'll start with line A. Enter 1 for yourself if no one else can claim you as a dependent. So pretty much anyone that's filling this out is going to be putting a 1. So on line B, we're going to enter 1 if any of these 3 apply to you. So if you're single, if you're married, have only 1 job, and your spouse doesn't work, or your wages from your second job or your spouse's wages or the total of both are $1,500 or less. So we'll go ahead and we'll put another 1 there. For line C, enter 1 for your spouse, but you may choose to enter 0 if you're married and have either a working spouse or more than 1 job. So we'll go ahead and put a 0 here. And the thing to point out is right here. And we're going to want to enter 0. So look at this bottom part right here. Entering 0 may help you avoid having too little taxes withheld. So you want to make sure that you're not putting too high of your allowances because it's going to reduce the amount of taxes that are withheld throughout the year. Increasing your allowance to 1 will decrease your federal income tax withholdings, and putting 0 will increase your federal withholding taxes. So if you're getting back a large refund at the end of the year, this is where you might want to consider whether or not you should put 0 or 1. Line D, enter a number of dependents you will claim on your tax return. So this is other than your spouse or yourself. So these are going to be your children or anyone that's depending on you is going to be included except you and your spouse. So if you have 1 child, put 1, 2, 3, depending on how many children you have, you can put that number right there on line item D. I put 3. On E, it says enter 1 if you will file as head of the household on your tax return. And if you look right up at the top, you can see where it is outlining what the head of household is. So if you're unmarried and pay more than 50% of the cost of keeping up your house for yourself or your dependents. So head of household is different than married filing jointly. So it's important to understand what the differences are and how you're filing. So we'll go ahead and put 0 here. So line F, enter 1 if you have at least $2,000 of child or dependent care expenses. So if you have daycare for your child, or you have adult daycare for your elderly parents or anyone that you're taking care of, if it's at least $2,000, then you want to put a 1. So we'll go ahead and put 0 right there. So line G has to do with the child tax credit. So what you want to do here is if your income is between these thresholds, so if it's in between, for line G, the child tax credit, if your total income will be less than $70,000, $100,000 if married, enter 2 for each eligible child. Then less 1 if you have 2 to 4 children, or less 2 if you have 5 or more eligible children. So if you made less than $70,000 and you had a child, you'd put 2 here. You'd put 2 for G. So if you made less than $100,000 if you're married and you had 1 child, you'd enter 2. Then less 1 if you have 2 to 4 eligible children, or less 2 if you have 5 or more eligible children. So if you had 2, you would say that's 2 times 2 would be 4, minus 1 would be 3. 3 would go in G. So if you had 5 or more eligible children, so it'd be 2 times 5 would be 10, minus 2 would be 8. 8 would go in G. If your total income was between $70,000 and $84,000, or $100,000 and $119,000 if married, then just enter 1 for each eligible child. So if you had 1, you'd enter 1, 2, 2, 3, 3, and so on. So in this instance, if you made $100,000 to $119,000, you'd put 3. But if you made more than $119,000, you put 0. If you made over $119,000, you start to get, you're in the phase out range of the child tax credit. So for this instance, you'd put 0. So in the example that we have laid out here, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, a maximum of 8, or 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And that's just for this example. Now, again, depending on your worksheet, you're only going to have 1 number here. So if it's 0, 1, 2, 3, and on up, and the same thing for line H, where you're just going to add everything up. Okay, so this top section is just your worksheet. The numbers you're going to get from line H here are going to go in line 5 right here. So in this instance, it's either an 8 or a 5. We'll put 5. If this is what you end up turning in, you could say that you're married. You could fill out all the other information here, and you can enter 5. 5 allowances is what's going to be calculated into your paycheck. The second page of the W-4 is really for if you're going to itemize. So on the top, you're going to see right here, deductions and adjustments worksheet. So this is going to be for those who are planning on itemizing deductions or claiming certain credits, because what this is going to do, it's going to help estimate, again, it's going to help estimate what your tax liability is going to be, so it comes out through your paycheck over the course of the year. If you look towards the next section of the W-4, 2 earners, multiple jobs worksheet, this is going to help you get a little better idea of if you have multiple jobs or if you have 2 people that are going out and earning income for your household. This is going to help you calculate what your allowances or additional withholdings should be on each paycheck. So for the example that we put in here, we put the number 5 from the first worksheet. The second line item is going to be find the number in the table 1 below that applies to the lowest paying job and enter it here. However, if you're married filing jointly and your wages from the highest paying job are $65,000 or less, do not enter more than 3. So the important number here is $65,000 or less. So if we go to table 1 and we look at what $80,000 would bring, it would say number 10. So if we look at $80,000 here, it would be 10. So then we go to line 3. If line 1 is more than or equal to line 2, subtract line 2 from line 1. So if line 1 is less than line 2, enter 0 on line 5 on page 1. Complete lines 4 through 9 below to figure out the additional withholdings amount necessary to avoid a year-end tax bill. So this is going to enter the number from line 2 of this worksheet. So if we go to number 4, if we go to line 4, enter the number from line 2 of this worksheet. So line 2 is 10, so we'll put a 10 in there. Enter the number from line 1 of this worksheet, and we'll put a 5 in there. So we're going to subtract 5 from 10. Line 5 from line 4. So that's going to give us 5. On line 7, find the amount in table 2 below that applies to the highest paying job and enter it here. So this is going to be a dollar amount. It's going to be one of these numbers that's going to be entered in on line 7. So let's say that the highest paying job was between $135,000 and $205,000. So we're going to put 1,130. 1,130. On line 8, we're going to multiply line 7 by line 6 and enter the result here. So that's going to be $5,650. Now line 9 says divide line 8 by the number of pay periods remaining in 2017. So we're going to divide line 8 by the number of pay periods remaining in 2017. Now, if you're already in 2018, then you're going to go ahead and divide it by the entire year or the amount of pay periods that you have remaining. So if it's twice a month, that's going to be 24. And if it's bi-weekly, that's going to be 26. So if we do it bi-weekly, that's going to be $217.30. So if this is the math that we're going by here, we're going to go back to page 1. We're going to cross out the 5. We're going to put a 0. And then you're going to enter the $217.30 in additional withholdings. As you can see, there are a lot of factors that are going to affect your W-4. Stay tuned for part 2 of the 7 mistakes and how to avoid them when filling out your W-4. If you've enjoyed this video, be sure to subscribe and leave your comments down at the bottom.